Welcome into another episode of Cross Chop, man. We got a lot to talk about today. There have been a lot of news happenings here going into week 2 of the NFL season. First off, John, how are we doing today? Doing all right? Feeling good? Moving into week 2?
Yep, doing swell. Ready to get going here. Ready for week 2. Very excited. Physically very tired from day filled with jiu-jitsu before this, but besides that, I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Did you whoop anybody's ass today?
Tried.
I did not. I got my ass whooped by an early wake-up call this morning on Jadeveon Clowney visiting Dallas today, and we're going to go ahead and start the show right off with that. The former number 1 overall pick in the 2014 draft. He's bounced around a few teams. He's looking for his 7th team in 8 seasons, but he has been productive as a run defender. He's been productive as a situational pass rusher. John, I know you did some really good breakdowns today on Twitter. Your initial impressions coming off of this news that he was visiting today, and then I'll dive into a little bit more of the semantics behind the scenes.
Yeah, I feel like he's someone who could really help the Cowboys defense, especially the places where it was plagued in week 1 against the Eagles. Hey, shout out to Solid Duck. Yes, sir. Appreciate you, my man. Really appreciate you. But yeah, I think he can help because, one of the biggest issues the Cowboys had against the Eagles was their defensive ends, especially Sam Williams and Dante Fowler really struggled against the run, whether it was setting an edge, playing with contain, taking good pursuit angles as backside pursuit defenders, any of that. They really struggled. And Jadeveon Clowney is really good with all of that. He's not the same kind of high impact run defender that he was in the past, but he just doesn't make a lot of mistakes. He fulfills his responsibility, gets the job done, and if they're going to run to his gap, he can make the play. But he's not someone who's just like destructing offensive lines like he was in the past against the run consistently. You can see that in his run stop percentages have fallen a little bit as he's gotten into the early to mid 30 portion of his career. So I think that could be a big help. And then as a pass rusher, he'd be a huge help as well. I mean, I talked about it so many times with you that the Cowboys only had 2 pass rushers that had over a 10% pass rush win rate last year. One of them is gone in Micah, the other one in Osa Odigizua, and Jadeveon Clowney had a 14.9 pass rush win rate last year. And the way he does it is really interesting because he's still a very powerful, explosive rusher like he has in the past, but he's not the same doesn't have the same kind of speed and quickness and change of direction ability that he had earlier in his career. He's very stiff now, but he's really rounded out his pass rush repertoire to give him more avenues to defeat blocks. I mean, he has the long arm and the power rush, the traditional bull, but he also has incorporated a lot of deceptive and manipulative footwork, stuff like stutter steps, Euro steps, stuff where you're threatening both edges and you can kind of attack either way depending on what the offensive lineman does. And he also pairs that really well with arm overs, cross chops, 2-hand swipes. So he has a really diverse array of pass rush moves. And I was kind of really surprised to see that because he was kind of more of a one-note power rusher earlier in his career. So seeing him really thrive and have success in those areas now is something that I think could really help the Cowboys. I think he's someone who can immediately be a starting edge defender for them, maybe take Dante Fowler or hopefully one of them off the field. I think if you had Clowney, I think him and Nealand would be a really good starting 2 edge defenders because they both give you stuff against the run, and they're both pretty good as pass rushers, powerful guys who play with good contain and understand pass rush lane responsibilities. And then that would allow you to play Dante Fowler in a more rotational role, which is where I think he thrives best, when he can really just pin his ears back and get after the quarterback. So I think he's someone who can really help the Cowboys defense, especially, like I said, for the issues that plagued it in week 1. So I think it would be a slam dunk move to make, especially for the issues that they have had.
Yeah, I agree with you. And you took one of my points right out of my mouth in saying that I think Jadeveon Clowney would be a starter here. You'd be able to put Dante Fowler back into a role to where I think he is better at as a rotational guy, to be able to come in rotational pass rush situations. That's what got him his money made last year in Washington. And we saw what Dante Fowler had against the run last week in Philadelphia. I just don't think that's where this defense could be best. You could have Clowney starting on one side. Nealand on the other, or even Williams on the other, and then you're rotating everybody in pass rush situations. And I think you have still a really good pass rush repertoire to work from for Matt Eberflus. I was showing that play earlier. You love the effort from Jadeveon Clowney. You know, you mentioned Father Time. It is certainly catching up to his athleticism, but seeing him be able to track down CeeDee Lamb on that tunnel screen.
It's with that kind of effort for a team that was, what did I say they were at that time, 3-11 or something?
Yeah.
Like you don't see veterans who are on 1-year deals playing with that kind of effort on a consistent basis for a team who doesn't have any playoff hopes, has no real aspirations for that season. So that just shows you the kind of internal drive that he plays for. And that kind of stuff from a veteran leader is always something that I think is valuable to incorporate into your team, especially because the Cowboys have, you know, outside of Fowler, they have a very young edge corps for sure.
Yeah, and to talk about the money side of things, I think this is where it might get a little tricky in bringing him in based on what the Cowboys have shown, what they've tended to do over the course of the last decade when it comes to outside free agents. So if you look at Jadeveon Clowney's 6 veteran contracts that he has signed over the course of his career, all but 2 of them have been for at least $10 million per year. The one he signed with the Carolina Panthers going into 2024 was 2 years, $20 million. He had that $10 million per year threshold that he was able to meet. However, you go back to 2023 when he was with the Ravens, had 9.5 sacks with the Ravens. It was a really good run defender for them. That was a $2.5 million contract. And it was almost a veteran minimum to what you were able to get out of Jadeveon Clowney. When you match that with the production he gave them, my goodness, I mean, it was the reason he got that big contract with the Panthers. But you would have to think the value these days going into 2025, especially a week into the season, would be probably somewhere in the $6 to $8 million range. I don't know if the Cowboys fork up that kind of money for an outside free agent, just because they haven't tended to do that. You can count how many guys that they have forked up more than $7 million for with one hand over the course of the last 15 years. Brandon Carr, which is the reason they are so gun-shy. Greg Hardy, another reason they could be gun-shy. And then now Dante Fowler. Those are the 3 guys you can point to who have had that threshold met from a per-year standpoint as signing as an outside free agent. So the money's going to have to work for Jadeveon Clowney. You know, it's the relationship with Brian Schottenheimer that brought him here today and has had this visit happen. From what I am told, he did leave the facility today. Josina Anderson also reported he left the facility today without signing a contract. There's going to be some things still discussed later in the week. As of right now, it doesn't sound like a contract is coming. And if I had to put odds on it right now, I don't think Clowney ends up a Cowboy, but the door is certainly still open. The visit today was positive, but I think the money part is going to be the big thing to figure out in this instance.
Yeah, and it's a shame because he is someone who can considerably help the Cowboys defense for sure, but Cowboys have historically not been willing to pay those guys, especially veterans. So it's unfortunate, but you know, you would like to think that with all the cap money they got from the Micah Parsons trade, that they would be more willing to make a move like this, but apparently not.
Let's pivot right quick to some more unfortunate news. And this one is super unfortunate. Cornerback DaRon Bland suffered a foot injury on Monday in Monday's bonus practice and was not practicing today on Wednesday with the team going into week 2. He was spotted in a walking boot in the facility. This puts his status highly in question moving forward into week 2 and beyond. Typically with a boot, it's very rare that you see somebody wearing a boot on Wednesday and play on Sunday. It's happened. Not to say it's impossible, but there's not much info coming out right now just about what the exact injury is. You have to put into context that he missed 10 games last year with a foot fracture. So that's going to be a big thing to keep in mind.
Foot?
And that's another thing I'm trying to get confirmed. And that's the info has been kind of sparing right now. I think they are still trying to figure out more info on what exactly the injury is going to be moving forward. But let's move into a reality where you cannot play with DaRon Bland on Sunday. You have some decisions to make. And I think the only decision you are left to make is starting either Reddy Stewart at a slot corner or elevating Zion Childress from the practice squad. So you have a guy who only has 1 game of NFL experience versus a guy with no NFL experience. That's a tough position to be in.
Yeah, it's tough because Bland was kind of the guy with the position flex that would allow you to play kind of your best best available talent at the cornerback position, depending on who was available. That was when we were thinking Trevon Diggs wasn't going to be available to start the season. But since he is, it's going to have to be somebody in the slot. That Reddy Stewart probably would have to be it. It's a huge loss if the Cowboys lose him, especially against an offense that's going to have Malik Neighbors running around, lining up all over the place, creating mismatches and being force-fed the ball consistently. So it's going to be tough. I wonder if this is a situation where, in the past, the Cowboys have sparingly allowed Trevon Diggs to travel with the opposing number ones. I wonder if they would be more willing to do that this week, even without Bland, just because someone like Malik Neighbors would be such a big mismatch against any of the other cornerbacks that the Cowboys would have available, that you would kind of take that risk. But there's no way around it. It's a tough loss, and it significantly hampers Dallas's ability to adequately defend the passing game. Luckily, the Giants don't have a great passing game because Russell Wilson seems shot. But besides that, it's tough. It's tough. You just hope it's not something that's going to be linger into a month or 2 month long type of thing.
Yeah, and man, this cornerback room, they just cannot be 100% healthy. It feels like they only get like one game a year. 2 years ago, it was the Diggs injury going into week 3 against Arizona. Last year, Bland got hurt before the season started, and then by the time he came back, Trevon Diggs was already out. So it's been tough for this cornerback room to keep all 3 starters together throughout the course of a year. And so, the hope is that this is not another notch in that trajectory over the course of the last few seasons, especially after they just paid him 4 years, $92 million. I mean, that would be super, super tough to come out of with. But if I know you only have so much film to look at and you only have so much knowledge with Reddy Stewart, especially, what do you do if Bland can't go on Sunday? Are you starting Childress? Are you starting Stewart, knowing the context that we have at least?
I mean, I would have to guess Stewart because he's the one that they made on the 53, and that they trust him, that at least he has some experience rather than no experience. So I would have to think that he's going to be the guy. Really, we have no idea how he's going to perform just because he's been seldomly used in regular season action in those situations. Yep. So it would be kind of a, going in with the best hopes type of thing, praying that he gets through without being too much of a detriment to the Cowboys defense. But it's going to be tough. Like I said, losing high caliber contributors like that to injury is one of the most difficult things that teams have to deal with on a season by season basis. And losing someone like DaRon Bland, there's no way for that not to be felt on game day.
Yeah, certainly. And this was this next topic is one we had before we even knew that the DaRon Bland injury happened. What other positions could Dallas look at in free agency? I mean, they have close to $40 million in cap space. It's the second most in the NFL. They have freedom here. And the reason I bring up DaRon Bland is because Stephon Gilmore is still out on the streets. It was funny on Sunday afternoon. I was just kind of perusing Twitter, and Gilmore had tweeted, "This is weird. I'm unemployed for the first time in 14 years, and I'm watching football." And so I wonder maybe, if the price is right with Stephon Gilmore, why not make the call? There's no way Gilmore's price is at $10 million right now, which is probably what it would have been had you signed him probably going into camp. But if you can get him for a $6 million, $7 million deal, sure. Whenever this room is fully healthy, he's probably a rotation guy at best. But I think that's still really good value and really good depth to have at the end of the day, and a really good veteran presence. But cornerback, any other position you'd be looking at in free agency with this available cap space?
Yeah, definitely corner. Obviously, Rasul Douglas is another name I think could be a valuable member that could be someone who can really have a tangible impact and play a contributing role in the defense for sure. Outside of that, I mean, the Cowboys wouldn't do it, but I'd honestly be interested in looking at a linebacker, but the thing is, I would be doing it to replace Mr. Green Dot, Kenneth Murray, but I don't think that's something that is realistic that the Cowboys would do. Besides that, I don't really see, with the free agents that are available now, I don't really see another position where they could really grab someone who would really have a tangible impact or be a contributor, unless, they get injuries to another position.
Question here from Niski. When does Josh Butler get back? He tore his ACL last year in the Thanksgiving game. It's looking about roughly November. He's got about the same timeline as DeMarvion Overshown has. They have been on very similar rehab trajectories, so I would expect both of them at the earliest early November. So if Bland's injury is multi-week and they have to account for that, then Josh Butler's not going to be an option. This is an interesting question.
Yeah. I was going to say the thing watching week one that I was reminded of, that I was thinking constantly, was that Eric Kendricks would have been the perfect inside linebacker or Mike linebacker for the Cowboys to have, given the way their defensive tackles were performing and his ability to key diagnose and get to plays on time, for lack of a better term, the things that Kenneth Murray really struggled to do. I think Eric Kendricks would be a fantastic person to bring in to kind of take over the green dot role, be that Mike linebacker, allow Sanborn to play the will, and then hopefully you can play Leofau at the Sam. And that would give you the ability, I think, to play the best 3 linebacker trio that you can have until DeMarvion Overshown is back.
And then another question here from David Lawrence. What about Savone Revel, the 3rd-round pick out of East Carolina? Looking like mid to late October there. He has to miss at least the first 4 games of the season. Sounds like he shouldn't be too far behind after that. We'll see as time goes on. But, that's certainly a position group to keep an eye on, is this cornerback room, linebacker group, as we've mentioned. Eric Kendricks last year, and I'm glad you brought it up as far as, he would be better with this defensive tackle group. There were so many times last year he was having to clean up so much mess up front, and it put him at a disadvantage. And I think his film suffered as a result. It's probably a big reason, too, why he's still on the street. I don't know. He could be asking more than what his market is allowing. But I do believe he would be much better than Kenneth Murray has brought you. And I feel like he would be decently better than Jack Sanborn. Would you agree?
Yeah, totally agree. I think he would be kind of the ideal linebacker given what's available to really insert into this team and make a maximum impact, given like dollars and cents and what you can do at just this point in the season, really.
Yeah. Let's move on. We do have a game this week. We do have a game this week to talk about. And what we're going to do here on the Cross Chop every week is on Wednesdays, we're going to preview the Cowboys offense versus the opponent's defense. And then on Thursdays, we'll flip on either side of the ball and do the opponent offense versus the Cowboys defense. So today we start with the talented defensive front that the Giants do have. I still like their second level too, but their secondary is definitely makeshift and kind of pieced together at times. They have tried to add some help in the offseason. I thought you saw some of that help get doubled up with the performance in week 1 against the Commanders. But what is your overall feelings, your overall initial impressions of this defense coming out of week 1, John?
I think if the Cowboys offensive line and protection can give Dak Prescott time, he's going to be able to slice and dice through this Giants defense like he's Mace Windu using Papad against, the Sith Lords. He's just going to just go right through them like they're nothing, I think. But the key is to give him that protection. And I think the Giants have a lot of guys that can create mismatches up front against the Cowboys. And number one is that big old MFer in the middle, Dexter Lawrence, who is the epitome of nose tackle. He is the elite of the elite tier of nose tackle. Not only can he play the run extremely well, but he's also an extremely impactful pass rusher, and he's going to be giving the trio of Tyler Smith, Cooper Beebe, and Tyler Booker an extremely tough assignment throughout the game, regardless of who's aligned on him. This is a guy that even if you double team him, he's still a load. He's still really difficult to stop, and then it doesn't get any easier really at any other spot on the Giants defensive line. You got at the outside on the edges, you got Brian Burns and Abdul Carter, Kayvon Thibodeau, 3 guys who can really get after the passer. I think Abdul Carter is someone who's going to be a double-digit sack guy, if not year 1, by year 2 and beyond. He's just such a talented, athletic, even nuanced and technical pass rusher at this point in his career for a rookie. He's just, the way his body moves, the way he can set up and attack both edges, the way he can use manipulative and deceptive footwork that we were talking about Clowney earlier. Abdul Carter does it in such a more smooth, and his ability to disassociate his upper body from his lower body, it makes him extremely difficult to block in one-on-one situations. So Terrence Steele and Tyler Guyton are going to have a big assignment on their hands, because you can't help everybody. You can't You can't double team Dexter Lawrence and then also give help on the outside to Tyler Guyton and Terrence Steele. So somebody's going to be one-on-one, and you're going to be holding your breath if they can hold up long enough so that Dak Prescott can take advantage of this subpar Giants secondary, because they don't have a single person who can cover, I think, CeeDee Lamb or George Pickens when they're revved up. I think both of them can have big days against this Giants secondary if Dak Prescott has the time to get them the ball.
Okay, so hate to pivot. We do have a little breaking news, graphic here. I didn't even know we had it. Producer Caden is having his baby. Hopefully tomorrow. All the best to producer Caden and Sarah. So I'm figuring out these little overlays we got. We have a little breaking news overlay. Here we go. DaRon Bland suffered an ankle injury in Monday's practice. Highly doubtful he plays Sunday, hoping to be just a 1 week issue, and he could be back playing in week 3 against the Chicago Bears. That's the word right now, is hopeful. So does not sound like he's going on Sunday. The Cowboys are going to have to figure out what they are going to do with DaRon Bland moving forward into week 2, or with the cornerback situation going into week 2, and then week 3 we'll revisit that next week. So something to watch moving forward. Any quick thoughts on that?
I think the fact that it could potentially only be a 1 week issue, given that he's wearing a boot, is a big win for, us on the outside. It's a fact that the Cowboys avoided this being a multiple week or potentially like a month or multiple month type thing, I think is big. And if there was going to be a team that you would miss on your second corner here, it would probably be the Giants, unfortunately, because outside of Neighbors, I'm not really worried about, Wan'Dale Robinson or Darius Slayton terribly. I think that you have, like I said, I think it would be very interesting to see if the Cowboys have Diggs travel with Malik Neighbors so that they can limit kind of the mismatches that he creates. Or if they don't, then they're going to have to put bracket and cone coverage constantly on Neighbors, high lows, different types of schematic things so that you can really lock him tight into a little prism and make sure that he doesn't really take over the game, because he is someone who can take over the game if you don't have the adequate coverage to slow him down.
Yeah, and we'll dive more into the Cowboys' defensive matchup tomorrow, but this is certainly going to be asking a lot of Trayvon Diggs coming out of just having 26 snaps in week 1, and now he's going to be asked to have a full-time role. I mean, they can't live without that. Now, if he were to be in still a ramp-up period, then that's when you're going to have to be throwing out Triquez Bridges and Reddy Stewart on the field at the same time. I don't think that's what you want. Now, granted, those two guys made the 53. Don't get me wrong, but it doesn't sound like that's what you want.
They didn't make the 53 because they thought that they can cover Malik Neighbors. I tell you that's for sure.
That is 100% true. Pivoting back to the Cowboys offense versus the Giants defensive matchup, you talk a lot about the trenches. I think the money is really going to be made in the pass game. And this is going to allow Dak Prescott to really find all of his receiving options in this game. 188 yards in the game against the Eagles. I don't think that really speaks to the level of confidence that he was putting into CeeDee Lamb, into Jake Ferguson, even Kevontae Turpin at times. But, if you're looking for George Pickens to get a little bit more action, I think this is probably the game. You think 2 years ago, Brandon Cooks had a slow start to the 2023 season. And I think they were 6 games into it when the Giants came to AT&T Stadium, and boy, they were feeding Brandon Cooks in that game. He ended up with 140-something yards in that game. It kind of reminds me, it's much different semantics, do not get me wrong, but it kind of reminds me of the approach that they could take with George Pickens here going into week 2 against what I still consider a lackluster secondary in New York, to be able to take advantage of that opportunity and get Pickens a 100-yard game as the season gets kicked off.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think the Cowboys have to manufacture ways to take advantage of this Giants secondary. Obviously, I think establishing the run, and I also think one thing I noticed when just peeking at the Giants defense in week 1 is they are very susceptible the second level to getting pulled up by play action passes from under center. So I think that's going to be a steady diet as well. You can see Dak Prescott taking advantage of the middle part of the field as well, using play action and stuff like that. So I wouldn't be surprised if you saw Ferguson or whoever they have playing the slot, whether it's Tolbert or Tolbert. Tolbert or Turpin. I was going to say Slurpin, but Tolbert or Turpin in the slot. I think that they can have an advantage here. I think really in the passing game, the Cowboys have the advantages across the board.
Yeah.
When you incorporate that with the way they're using pre-snap motion, at the snap motion, under center play action, I think that they can have a lot of success in that area. And I think one of the best ways that you can slow down a pass rush is by using play action. So I think that's going to be a very big portion of the Cowboys offensive scheme is going to be those under center play action passes that can allow you to attack the middle part of the field and also slow down that pass rush.
One of the big free agent additions over the offseason for the New York Giants was bringing in Paulson Adebo. Do you see any improved play in the secondary as a result of his presence?
Not terribly. I think Paulson Adebo has someone who has always been – he's really good. He's at his best when he's playing cover 3, silo coverage. You know, he plays the vertical concepts really well. He struggles when you start using breaking routes, you know, ins, outs, curls, comebacks, things where he has to flip his hips, change direction is kind of where he struggles. He's a little bit stiff. But if you allow him to play that silo coverage, you know, just – he's playing the red line constantly, he's going to do a really good job. But I don't think, given the way that we saw the route running from the Cowboys offense in the first week, I don't think that's going to be much of a problem. I think you're going to be seeing them move CeeDee Lamb around, have him run a variety of breaking routes to take advantage of, you know, these Giants corners' biggest issues.
Yeah, let's dive into the intricacies of this defensive line for New York, and we can kind of go one.
Good. They're real good. They're real good.
Really damn good. And I have always, or not always, over the past couple of years, I have given them a little bit of flack because they have so much talent up front, yet you don't see the sack production. You don't see the quarterback pressure production as you probably should with that group that they have. Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, Dexter Lawrence. Now they add Abdul Carter. Last week, they finally get home. Last week, they finally generate the pressure. That's a good Commanders offense that they kept to 21 points. Granted, it was still a 15-point loss, but I think there are positives you could take away from that defensive front performance for the Giants. Let's kind of go one by one here. We can start with Brian Burns. He led the Giants last week with 2 sacks. I think when you see those 2 sacks, you see them more as a product of him being opened up by all of those other talents that they have up front. Abdul Carter had 4 pressures in his own right, led all rookies in the NFL last week with that. But let's start with Brian Burns. In your eyes, what makes him special?
I think he's the epitome. He's a really good finesse pass rusher. He does a really good job of winning inside and outside using pairing strikes. He's really good. Has a really, really potent spin move that he uses to win. And he does a really good job. And when I say pairing strikes, is when they're kind of, that means they're kind of in boxing terms, a counter puncher. So they're waiting for the offensive lineman to throw their punch, and then they're going to parry it down so it doesn't land on their body. Brian Burns has the most issues is when the offensive lineman's able to make first contact, because he doesn't really have the strength or the hand technique or the ability to really strip grips and continue fighting towards the quarterback. So he's someone that the cleaner he stays, keeps hands off his pads, the more effective he's going to be on a consistent basis. So it's going to be on Tyler Guyton and Terrence Steele to be able to make that first contact, to slow him, to knock him off of his line if they want to have success.
Looking at Dexter Lawrence, I know this is a guy we both agree is top 3, maybe not 3, maybe not 2 defensive tackle in the NFL. He's going to give this interior offensive line for the Cowboys issues. His power, his anchor, his strength, what makes him so special in the grand scheme of things?
All of those things that you said. He has the power, he has the anchor, he has the strength, he has the hand technique, but he also, for such a big guy, he's very quick and he can change direction. He can attack both edges really well. And the thing about him is, the thing I think that really helps separate him a lot is when you're playing that interior defensive line, so much about it is getting your second step in the ground quickly so that you have a firm base when you make contact, so that you can maximize your ability to generate force on contact. And he does that phenomenally. You see him consistently put centers and guards on their heels right immediately at the snap. And that's because he's so quick getting that second step in and being able to shoot his hands inside and really press those blockers back. And it really makes it difficult for offense, especially against the run. It makes it really difficult for offensive linemen to really do effective combos and doubles because whoever's the point man is consistently getting put on their heels. So that puts the offensive linemen kind of different levels, and it's really tough for them to generate maximal amount of force onto the defensive tackle, onto Dexter Lawrence, because there's such one guy's on their heels and the other guy's trying to come. So Lawrence can kind of put one guy on their heels, throw his hip at the other guy, and when he climbs, shed and get after the ball carrier or the quarterback, what have you be, whatever the concept is. So he's just so technically good. He's so powerful. He's so quick. He just does so many things well. He's really one of my favorite players to study and watch on a consistent basis.
Two more guys I want to highlight. We'll start with Abdul Carter, the number 2 overall pick in the draft coming out, or number 3 overall pick at the draft coming out of this past class. Big, powerful. There were so many comparisons that were made to Micah from the draft process. I think he's a completely different player. Other than the 11 on his jersey at Penn State, completely different player just because you see the power on display from Abdul Carter, and he wears offensive tackles down as games go on. And I think you saw it last week with his 4 pressures. He was consistently able to get into the backfield. He almost blocked a punt against Washington as well. In your eyes, just seeing what he had in the preseason and in this one game, how challenging is this going to be for Tyler Guyton and Terrence Steele?
Extremely challenging. I think he's the next great NFL pass rusher. He's going to be, like I said earlier, he's the guy that's going to be the next double-digit sack per season guy. He's going to be that guy that's going to be vying for, sack titles. He does really all of the things well that you would want from a young pass rusher. His ability, like I said, manipulative and deceptive footwork. He's using stutter steps. He's using Euro steps. He's getting offensive linemen guessing which edge he's going to attack. And that allows them to either generate power because they're on their heels and they're not sitting down anchored, ready for that power, or it allows them to attack one of the edges if they shoot their hands. He's a guy that he can win in a multitude of ways. I talked about how Brian Burns is someone who's kind of like a counter puncher in a boxing sense because he parries strikes. Abdul Carter is someone who can win in multiple ways because he can initiate contact and win. He can parry strikes and win. And the really special things that he can do is he can slip strikes and use that ghost move, that Von Miller made so popular where he shows the long arm, ducks under the strike, and then corners. He can do all of that so exceedingly well. So it makes it really tough for offensive linemen to consistently be able to block him because no matter what situation you put him in where you try to take away some of his tools, he still has other tools that he can use to beat you. And that's why he's going to be, one of the best pass rushers in the NFL over the next decade, in my opinion.
Shout out to Vach. Appreciate you checking in with us here
Vach,
tonight.
my man, what's up?
What's going on, my guy?
My Muay Thai brother.
Last guy we'll check in with on this Giants defensive front is Kayvon Thibodeaux, a former number 2 overall pick who hasn't worked out. Clearly hasn't worked out as far as living up to his draft stock. He still brings value in some areas, even though it's far from what they expected out of him. I think with all of the other bodies that they do have on that line, it certainly allows for more opportunities for Kayvon Thibodeaux, but you still have to account for him at the end of the day. Kayvon, what does he still bring? I see his value in the run game. What do you see there, John?
Yeah, and I think he kind of reminds me of a lot of Sam Williams, as in like he will flash some really unbelievable stuff, like where you see like, oh wow, this is why this guy was, the top rated pass rusher by so many when he declared, and why so many thought he could have been like the NFL's next great pass rusher. But then on a lot of snaps, he has a lot of like loafs or plays where he's undisciplined, runs where he's getting pushed out of his gap, or he's peeking out of his gap, or he's jumping out of his gap, those type of things. So I think he's his own worst enemy, in my opinion. So I think when he's someone and he's revved up, he can be a handful, but it's really anyone's guess when those handful of games will happen over the course of a year, because he puts up a lot of duds because of his undisciplined play. So I think he's kind of a little bit like a more talented Sam Williams, in my opinion.
Yeah, and this defensive front, I mean, it's going to be a challenge, especially for, I think, a guy like Tyler Guyton, still ramping back up to 100% full game speed. You saw some positive moments against the Eagles, but you definitely saw some negative moments too, to where his footwork was kind of messy, and we addressed that in Monday's show a little bit on the film watch. But against a guy like Abdul Carter, against a power guy like Abdul Carter, the room for error is so very little. Throw some questions in the chat. We'll get to them here in our final comments. But if you had to pick one offensive lineman that it's the biggest challenge for going into Sunday, would it be Tyler Guyton?
I mean, based on what we saw, at least in the pass protection department, I'm going to say Terrence Steele, just because of all the struggles that he had on the offensive line there. Obviously, I don't think Guyton was like a ton better, but I liked given that Tyler Guyton had no training camp, I thought that his performance was more promising than Terrence Steele, who had been there the entire time. He should be revved up and ready to go. I didn't like his strike timing. I didn't like his balance. I didn't like his hand placement. There were a lot of things where he actually also got away with a couple holds that he should have been called for in key moments that luckily didn't get called. So I think he's going to have the toughest time. And I think he's the guy I would be most worried about. I'm also really worried about Booker when he gets lined up against Dexter Lawrence one-on-one. If that happens, I think that would be malpractice if the Cowboys pass protection, slides the center away from Dexter Lawrence and Tyler Booker gets one-on-one with that big mother effer. That would not be great. But I think as far as the tackles go, I don't think either of them you can think are going to have like fantastic days, but I would be more worried about Terrence Steele and pass protection against these guys. And also just based on what they do well, especially Brian Burns. I think he's someone who can really take advantage of Terrence Steele's aggressiveness with his hands, because Terrence Steele is always someone who's trying to initiate contact with both of his hands. And I think that really plays right into what Brian Burns does best, as I said, parrying strikes. So I think he would have the best issue. I think Tyler Guyton has a little bit of a better repertoire of strikes that he can use, whether it's the high hand, low hand clamp or double unders, those type of things. And I think that gives him a little bit more of a tool bag to have success against these guys. But I'm not overly optimistic that either one's going to have like a phenomenal, neither one of them is going to put up a goose egg in pressures and pass protection today. I think they're both going to have their snaps where they get beat for sure.
I know this is a comment you can get behind. You probably just go get Carl.
Let's go. Bring my guy Carl back.
He's still on the streets, man. He's still
a Pilates king now. If anybody who follows him on socials will see, he's been doing a ton of Pilates, getting that flexibility going.
Yep.
I would be a fan of it. Always bring my guy Carl back.
We're gonna wrap this show up. I have an article to write now with this DaRon Bland news, or an article to update rather. But it's sounding more and more like DaRon Bland highly, highly doubtful for Sunday against the Giants. We'll see what his status will look like going into next week against the Chicago Bears. I think it honestly could be a situation. Honestly, since it's so early in the season, you make sure he's 100% healthy before throwing him back out there. So I would prepare for definitely 1 week, or not definitely, highly, highly. Questionable for week 1 or week 2, excuse me, and then going into the game against the Bears. We'll address that more as we dive into next week and see what the recovery looks like. But overall, appreciate everybody checking in. Chris Baller 250, Smalls HD. Our guy Vach, thanks for tuning in. Jeremy Phillips, Solid Duck, appreciate the love on the.
Thank you, Solid
That was
Duck,
our very first. What is that called? A super chat?
Yeah, super chat.
That was our very first super
Where are
chat.
the rest of you broke asses, huh? What the hell? No, I'm just kidding. Really appreciate you guys tuning in, and obviously really appreciate Solid Duck for contributing to the cause. You guys are the best. Really appreciate y'all.
And shout out to our guy, Caden. Him and his wife are going into the hospital tonight. Our producer, Caden, behind the scenes, having their very first child. So everybody put some good wishes out there for our guy, Kay Gates. And hopefully we'll have some baby pictures to share here on the show tomorrow. Would that be a
2040? Fam is getting one bigger, my friend.
That'd be a 2047 first-round draft pick potentially. So, yeah.
I'm grinding the tape already.
Let's do it. He's moving the umbilical cord with the cross strap,
He's getting those arm overs like crazy.
Well, John, I appreciate you, man. We'll be back tomorrow to preview the Giants offense against the Cowboys defense, which is also so we'll see which matchup probably looks best going into Sunday week 2. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Stay blessed. For John, I'm Nick. We'll see you next time.